Hey everybody, Kevin Schulteis here. It is January 21st, 2021. Everybody's so excited about the new year. We are going to do a quick review in this video. They always talk about, people always say, hey, do your research. And I've been listening, in the last month or whatever, all the vaccine stuff is coming out, all the COVID vaccines, and wanted do my research on that, right? It was like 6 months ago that we all started learning all about mRNA vaccines, and does it, the number one question everybody has is like, does it change your DNA, right? And then my understanding in layman's terms from all my reading is it doesn't penetrate the cell. Supposedly, inside your cell is where your DNA lives, and outside your cell is the RMAN or whatever, and it goes near the cell, and then your body looks at it and says, "Oh my goodness, attack it!" And then it develops your antibodies, and it's not the live virus, because up until you know these types of viruses, my understanding is technically vaccines are small components of the virus of whatever you're fighting, and then it's usually very small amounts, and then they pump it full of things like aluminum and other boosters to make your cell susceptible, and then it goes in, and then your body attacks it, and then that's how it develops um, immunity. That's the kind of the older style, and then this newer style is like a protein, supposedly, just on the outside of a cell, and then so it's supposed to be different. So what was interesting is I was like in my search for all things news in Canada and whatnot. I came across Global's, hey, what's in the vaccine, which is great, right? Because I've seen a ton of these things, like literally opening up. Where did I put it? Opening up the PDF and looking for things. Literally came across, the COVID, vaccine consent form for the Pfizer one, right? And then this is from December 14, 2020, and then this is for the Toronto public health area. And then usually what will happen is, like, if this is like the official one, they're like, hey, okay, that's cool. I'm surprised I was Googling some of these words, and this one came up, so I'm like, oh, cool. So this actually says, hey, if you're filling this out, I can appreciate this. They want you to fill it out. And then yes and no to allergies or disorders or flu vaccines or blah, blah, blah. And then they kind of list out the ingredients. And they're very specific. They're not just, they're using the actual words, right? So we're going to get into searching some of these, right? Because I started looking up that and looking up that and looking up that, and my head kind of exploded. And then looking up these, and then looking up these words, and then these words are a little bit more common. So yeah, so either way, this was from the Toronto health thing. So, like, and then you're like, hey, okay, I've read everything, and you sign away that you're giving them permission to give you that dose. And what's interesting too is it's very specific to even on the administration, right? It's like, hey, when you get the vial, dilute it with 1.8 milliliters of that type of sodium chloride, basically salt water or saline or whatever they call it. Don't shake, but gently invert, and then after dilution, after dilution, one dose equals 0.3 milliliters, which is 30 micrograms of the mRNA. And I've seen this micrograms before, so and I had to look up what mcg was, and that's 1,000 of these equals 1 gram. And then I guess milliliters, yeah, that's a different ratio. So I guess it's 10 100 micrograms would equal 1 milliliter. So I appreciate the liters on this. Now, what was very interesting was everywhere I looked, whether on university websites, they would usually list off the ingredients like this. This was fairly common. It's like, hey, and sometimes they break it down, other times they wouldn't. It's like, okay, these are the salts. These are fairly common in a lot of things, fairly neutral kind of water type things. These are fats. And like different other things that make up things, and then sucrose. I guess a lot of it's the sugar, and reading up on the sugar is needed to make the virus survive the cold temperatures. So between the sugar and the salts and stuff. But we're going to look into a couple of things, and then of course, there's a ton that you can read up on what an RNA is and how that works. But my main concerns are what I was researching. And I'm going to show you a couple very interesting things on some of these chemicals right here. But what was interesting, so here's another breakdown of, I like this one, Nebraska Medical or whatever, breaks down both the Pfizer and the Moderna versions. So this one has the chemicals that I was researching, and then this one doesn't as much. And the mRNA spike thing, I've seen some websites break it down differently, and then other ones, I thought I read that both the active ingredient is the same in both of them, but they just have slightly different carriers or something. So anyways, not that if you Google stuff, not that Wikipedia is the most trustworthy, but it is a good start of everything. Not everything on Wikipedia is correct, because it has a huge amount of biases of whoever wants to edit the documents, and then if they don't like your edits, they can unedit them if you have so ultimately Wikipedia is good for a lot of things, but it's not the end-all truth on the internet, so be careful with that on any topic. just research certain people or research certain things, and you'll probably find some stuff that you don't agree with on Wikipedia. But just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true. So anyways, and then I ended up coming across some research on the CDC, which is the U.S. Department of Health Services, part of that. So one of the website answers is on one of the chemicals is right from the CDC's website. And what was interesting, and I happened to start with this website first, was on the global news site. They're the only place I've seen outside of this 30 micrograms of the mRNA or whatever. That's the one number I always see. Outside of that, they are the only website that I've actually seen that lists out each of these ingredients separately, which is very interesting, right? So, look at that. It has, the sodium chloride and this and this and this and this, and then it even breaks down 6 milligrams of the sucrose, of the sugar. So I have to give props to global news, on that one. You take all websites. This is one of the reasons why when I research any news topic or anything, you take everything with a grain of salt, and you have to be careful with relying on any one news source too much, right? Whether it's United States, and you have a lot of known websites that are, whether they're left-leaning or right-leaning in terms of politics. The majority of most media on the internet is extremely left-leaning. So there's not as many right-leaning type websites. And media nowadays, there used to be a lot of media throughout the years that was very central, but being a central media company doesn't make you a lot of money nowadays. Doesn't get you a lot of clicks, doesn't get you a lot of lot of attention. So you kind of almost have to pick a side. In Canada, that's a different story. We have a bunch of our media, our legacy media is all state, the majority of it is state funded and state backed. So you have to take that with a grain of salt, whether it is CBC, Global, CTV, a bunch of your newspapers, the majority of your newspapers. There's not too many companies out there, media companies in Canada, that isn't funded by the state. So you have to always take that into account as well. So, but once in a while, you get a gem or something of some information, or at least a different perspective, right? And you always want to gather all your perspectives, all your information, and make your own decisions. So anyway, so that being said, I started looking up these chemicals, and man, I had a million tabs open up here. I have a few open up here, but I had a ton. So that being said, I started looking them up, right? So I'm like, okay, and then you have to like weed through, like, it's just even funny, you copy that. This is how I do that. You'd open that up, see like what's going on, whether it's straight Wikipedia, whether it's, so some of the main first websites I was opening up would be like really boring chemical ones, like blah 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 blah, and it would just barely have any English to it. There's no summaries, no what it was good for. Once in a while you get a site that would have a little bit more information, would have a little bit additional information. But then, even on this particular website, very interesting. So, some of these substitutes, right? This is where you make your own decision. So this particular part of the chemical, it's talking about in mice it causes high-grade invasive cancers, very specifically in the urinary bladders, but not in any other tissues for the most part. But they said it was pretty substantial. I'm like, oh, okay, well, is that true, or or what's up with that, right? So then you need to look around. Same thing, I'm trying to look up multiple variants of the spelling of the name or whatever, because you want to make sure you get the right names. So then as I was looking up stuff, then there's the mice thing again, and then you start looking up the different ingredients, and once again here on this particular site's listing like 12 different, or a bunch of different papers, and it's highlighting that, hey, very causes highly metastatic type tumors in the bladder, and because the majority of human bladders are I guess a mouse bladder is somewhat a good indication of things, right? So there is and you can look up a whole bunch of things. Like, these are all different documents. So I'm like, okay, blah blah blah. Sometimes my head was glossing over. So I was like, okay, what's going on? Another variant was the two. What was the? What was it? The two hexyl decanonate or whatever. Let's see. Let me go back here. That's interesting. Suspected carcinogen on that one. So hexyl, that doesn't sound so good. This one ran into a few documents where it was like, okay, somewhat suspected to be a carcinogen. It's not good. It does have some levels of toxicity around it, or if you breathe it in and things like that. Most of it was around that. So this one, the first one was the very high suspect one. The the first ingredient is extremely suspect in my mind, but you can make up your own decisions. This ingredient was so-so, and then just hexane. And it was fun, kind of just looking up that. It was just talking about doesn't have any known cancer causing things, just because there hasn't been much research on hexane on the humans and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. Now, what was interesting was, as I was looking up the one that was the medium one that wasn't as obvious as the first ingredient, but I ran across the CDC's official government website for the 2-hexanate, and it was very interesting because very quickly it says here 2-hexanate is no longer made or used in the United States because it has harmful health effects. So I thought that was very interesting. And then how can it affect my health and whatnot, right? And it's like, yeah, don't breathe it in. You might get tingliness, or the reproductive organs might be damaged, right? Which is interesting because that's... Oh, yeah, one of the documents was this one affected, I guess, mouse testicles and stuff like that. So the first ingredient seems to cause very interesting bladder cancers. This one affects testicular issues, but it doesn't... it kind of goes on to, it's asking, what about... birth defects or offspring. It did seem like females don't gain as much weight or had fewer offspring, but they couldn't... doesn't know if it has any birth defects. Interesting. Okay. And it doesn't seem to affect children any more than others. Does it cause cancer? If swallowed for a long period of time, did not find any cancer. So this one has classified it as a carcinogen, whether it causes cancer or not. So there is inadequate information on this one. Okay, so that is from the CDC, right? That's right up there, and the CDC website is right there, right? So it's the same website you can see that I'm on. Oops. Where did I go? This one here. Let me put those together. So this is there's a PDF version for that. So yeah, so that is very interesting on that. Whether it's those 3 ingredients, whether or not hexane, you want to put hexane in your body or not, inject that into your muscles, into your cells, or all 3 of those seem to me very aggressive chemicals. I didn't even get into what the industries that they're usually used for. that you can do your research on that. But some of the other ones, I did look up all the other ones, and they seem to be fairly generic. Not generic, but fairly safe fats. And all the rest is fairly generic stuff. But it was this large amount of these first 3 chemicals, which is the most concerning to me. So if I were to choose one vaccine over another, or vaccinate at all, I didn't look up what the other ingredients were of. There's 2 or 3 other ones. The first 2 are out, and then there's 2 or 3 other ones kind of maybe expected to be out in the next 3 or 6 months or something like that. And then there might be a couple other ones behind that. Supposedly China is developing one. I think India, unless India's using the China one, I think Africa's developing one. So there are a few. There is a Canadian variant, I think, out of Montreal, but that's like a year behind or something like that. So, yeah, either way, you want to look into these things, right? You want to be an informed citizen, not make silly decisions. What you put in your body is important. You want to know what the long-term effects are. It's funny how they're talking about, the handful of allergic reactions. Well, it's not allergic reactions that potentially matter so much as what about long-term effects? And nobody knows about stuff. Heck, they don't even know. They don't even have the data about the vaccines, about how long the immunity lasts, or can you get COVID again? Can you do this? Can you do that? There's no information out right now. So you'll want to do some of your own research. Of course, use a balanced approach. Lots of different websites. Not everything on the internet is true, so you do have to be careful. There may be websites that have biases, whether it's news websites. They for sure have. Any news website has its biased, and you probably know what its biased is beforehand. So you gotta, if you learn something from them, you gotta take that with that information and balance it with a bunch of other pieces of information to make a healthy choice for yourself. And then there's the other things too, is there is sometimes some choices are irreversible. So sometimes there's two sides of things. There's choices where you regret not making a choice, and then there's sometimes making a choice too drastically, too quickly, and you regret it later on in life because of risks of cancers and whatnot. I deal with cancer every day as part of my job, dealing with cancer patients and paying out insurance programs, because I talk about cancer all the time. I wish that wasn't a component of what I did, and cancer is just ravaged not just Canada, but the world, but Canada in general for sure too. I remember 12 years ago when I first started learning about cancer rates. It was like, if I remember correctly, 12 years ago, it was like 1 in 3 men and 1 in 4 women. And as a man, I was a little upset, going 1 in 3 men, like. But at the time, they showed a growth curve, and it was like a hockey stick, exponentially going up, and it hadn't leveled off yet. So I'm like, well, where does that graph end? Now we're basically 1 in 2 people in Canada, somebody's getting cancer. 1 in 2 people, and if anything, it's probably a little higher. And I'm out in the Maritimes right now, and I talk to people. I'm like, you want to know what? They don't know if it's generic. They don't know if it's in the air. They don't know if it's in our food. It's so funny because just searching tons of these. Hang on, just searching, like, not just these chemicals and things like that, but like other things and other vaccines or other stuff. It's like there's so many things in everything, right? And what's really funny is some of the excuses is like, hey, it's only a small part, it's not going to hurt you. But then if it's in your shampoo, if it's in your toothpaste, it's in your skincare products. A lot of these things that I researched today, a lot of them were in skincare products and toothpastes, and a huge amount of them were in manufacturing, separation, paint strippers, separating chemicals, from one chemical to another, or oils, separating oils and things like that. And or fertilizers and things like that. So it's like a lot of these things, they're like, hey, you're only getting a little bit of it. And I'm like, okay, I get that that's this one particular shot, or this one toothpaste, or this one hair product, or one skincare product, or it's in our food. A ton of it was a bunch of the different websites all said, yeah, it's a common thing in our industry and in food preparation. Right? So if you're getting small amounts of these chemicals in a whole bunch of your things, yeah, any one industry is going to say, hey, it's not our fault that chemical's in your body, and in small amounts it's safe. We don't have any drastic issues reported because of our little bit in the food, or in your toothpaste, or in your hair, or in your skincare products, or in your vaccine. But it all adds up, and then at the end of the day, you have to wonder why we as Canadians are suffering so many interesting medical issues. As Canadians, as Americans, as people in the modern era. I have a few other thoughts on that, and but yeah, you have to wonder, what is it? Why are we getting so many viruses, or not viruses, but why are we getting so many allergies? Why are we getting so much cancer? Why is our body starting to not process things like it used to, whether it's diabetes, whether it's things like Crohn's disease, whether it's yeah, there's just a ton of different things that you never really heard about, or such small numbers 10, 20, 30 years ago. Some of these things were barely, you barely knew somebody in your city that had it, or your town, or whatever. And now so many families have issues, and it affects so many people. So anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching. And if this was of any interest to you, definitely share it. Definitely check out any website that has any of the chemicals listed. Like I said, Global was the only one that listed the actual breakdown of each of the amounts out of all the websites. I thought that was so like, good work on them for finding out the amounts, because nobody else bothered even listing the amounts. And but again, you got to watch out for their explanations of things, and go from there. Anyways, make some smart decisions. That's some new information. If this video is of any value to you, like it, thumbs up, plus it, whatever platform I'm on. I'm transitioning away from the majority of the popular platforms, and getting into the platforms that defend free speech and good or bad ideas, ideas that are helpful, or ideas that offend you. They are all good, and if you have an idea that you come across that you're not fond of, they are not for shutting it down or canceling it. They open up the platform to you to make a counter argument, or you come out and promote your ideas as better ideas. And that is essence free speech, and that is one of the fundamental rights that I am fighting for, because that is some of the basis to defend and have any other argument, or develop good laws, or stand against bad laws. You've got to have free speech. If you take away free speech, you take away the right to publish information, and that you've basically taken away all your other rights. They're all connected, mostly to the free speech. So, okay, guys, it was a pleasure, and yeah, find me on Rumble, or Minds, or Library, or some of these other alternative websites as well. So, and like your favorite creators, and then in the future, love your prayers and support. in that. So, okay, guys, talk to you later.